Most tours, when you're looking to rent an apartment building, is a very poor experience. We've catered our process from start to finish, from the hello to the handshake when they leave, to be a 10-star experience, 5-star experience, A+ experience, whatever you want to call it, is a great experience. In typical communities, leasing tours, they're rushed, they're impersonal, and they're purely transactional. Prospects leave feeling unseen and uncertain, wondering if it's the right fit for them. At Faris Capital Partners, we've curated the entire process, and we're going to uncover everything from start to finish in this talk before they actually even apply to be a resident at one of our buildings, on what we do to increase the conversion rate, to have potential residents scream like, yes, I want to be here, I want to live here. John, it's great to be here with you.
So good to be here, Mark, man. This is one of those things, it was interesting to think about, like, really, when we look back on the first couple of years of Faris Capital Partners, this was probably the area you and I got most excited about. Really, what does this feel like when you come to visit one of our properties? And what do we want them, like, what kind of emotions do we want them to have after they're leaving? And really, Mark, it kind of blows me away when we're touring rent comps. The experiences we often have are, almost abysmal. We've literally had some situations where we were basically run out of the place. The person was like, I just got back in town, I'm super busy, can you guys come back later? We've had situations where we've had to find the person, like sticking our head in various office doors. And it's just like, to me, it's the storefront, right? It's like no different than having a camera store and like not having any cameras on the shelf, and then having like a surly, person behind the counter, right? It's just one of those things so many operators get wrong. And so for us, it was really where we spent a lot of our focused attention, right? Getting this process right. And it's a very curated, like, step-by-step process. And we spent a lot of time training our team on it. So anyway, I'm really excited to jump in today, but it's just one of those things, man. As an entrepreneur, if you're listening to this, you should probably have a regular cadence, at least on a quarterly basis, if not monthly, and interrogate your entire, client experience. Like, where are, potential slippage points? Where is there friction for the consumer? And, if you did that, so many of your problems would probably be solved almost overnight, right? So yeah, it's an exciting topic to dive into. And I think it's a lot of, when I go out on YouTube and I look at other content creators around the space, you don't see a lot of people talking about it. So to us, it's our secret weapon.
100%, John. And if you're interested in learning more, go to fulloutinvesting.com, where we actually have a sample deal right there. As soon as you log in, you can go to that website. You can actually see a sample deal. And then there are 10-step processes there as well to learn a little bit more about our next investment and how we actually take these large deals down. You want to make sure to get on our short list to be able to get access to the next investment so that you don't miss out, because we do have limited spots. And so, yes, John, in regards to curating that first experience, to me, it only makes sense. And this is where I would say, when we started touring other properties, this is one of the biggest, I'd say, opportunities that I was just shocked. I was shocked on how the resident experience when a new resident goes to a building. So for context, we're looking at 100-unit plus apartment buildings. We're going and we're actually walking through and we're doing our market research. So we're seeing firsthand how residents are being treated. And we're seeing the warm welcome or not a warm welcome. We're seeing if there's garbage on the floor or if it's super clean. We're seeing if the leasing office is actually staged properly. We're seeing if the model suite is actually staged properly. We're seeing the gym and how it actually showcases, and we're just seeing if it's curated or not. And John, like, it's been an eye-opening experience and such an opportunity for any sort of operators that want to go the extra mile and wow residents to be able to convert more. I mean, if you just imagine if you have 100 resident tours coming through, and if you can convert another 10%, you have 10 new residents coming in, which helps your occupancy come up as well. And then the more demand you have, the higher rents you charge, which actually makes your building more valuable. And so this is just such, oh man, it's just such low-hanging fruit. Staging the leasing office, for example, staging the model suite. We had that one example where we did the tour, and the property manager was super excited because he said, I staged this, but you could tell it wasn't professionally staged. She kind of threw some furniture together and she was really excited. And this was like at a 200 unit apartment building. And so you would expect tens of thousands of dollars to go in and stage one model suite. When you have 200 units, you have all these residents going through that one. When we're selling a house in the residential brokerage, we spend thousands of dollars on one home. We have one leasing center, one model suite for 200 units, and the money wasn't put into actually staging it professionally by a professional stager. And so this is, when you go do that, just the increase in the upside in the property becomes so great. So totally, yeah, we got super excited when we started and we built that out, John.
Well, speaking of the model suite, right? So we had a property manager, not the group we're currently working with. When we told them, this was kind of in the interview stage, that we really like, here's what we like, here's our expectations. We have this tour we want to train your team on. So we're just walking them through our expectations. They kind of told us that, staging a model unit really doesn't make sense because, we have to move the furniture and, that unit could be leased and all these sort of things. And, I'll just put it this way. At our Charleston property, we actually acquired majority of the furniture on Amazon and Wayfair. So really nice looking stuff, but affordable. It's not like we spent $25,000, $30,000 here. We spent a very affordable amount of money, but residents were so taken with the model unit and they kept at, well, where did you get the bed? Where did you get this? That we actually created like shopping carts on Wayfair and Amazon where we could send a link to the person so they can just isolate those items. So, to me, that was all the proof I needed that the model unit is well worth the investment. Now, in this particular case, what was beautiful, it's actually the leasing center, right? So we have an office in one of the bedrooms, and then the other bedroom is staged as the, owner's, primary suite, if you will. But it just has that great feeling. And so, it's a dual purpose thing. Cost us a few bucks, but, now we have residents saying, where did you get that furniture? So I think that just speaks to, that little bit of extra effort makes a big difference because at the end of the day, residents are choosing their next living accommodation. Yes, location matters. It has to be the right area and have some of the right amenities. People come in with those things in mind. But my view is they're taking the tour for a reason. What they saw online, or maybe they saw on a flyer. We do distribute things to, say, for example, businesses in the area. So however they came to us, they felt like it served those needs. It checks those big boxes: location, size, amenities. So in our world, like when they walk on, we have to sign them that day. Otherwise, we're going to lose that opportunity forever. That's how we think about it, right? So why wouldn't we spend a little bit extra to stage the unit? Why wouldn't we have a branded scent that's pleasant and nice and just makes people feel relaxed and comfortable? All those little things add up. And I think for the resident, if you walk into a leasing center that's, kind of disorganized, paperwork stacked up, folders and files everywhere, trash cans overflowing, subconsciously, you're going to start to register, is this what it's going to feel like when I live here and I have a maintenance issue? Is that maintenance issue going to end up on a stack of files somewhere and forgotten about?
Yeah.
So, it all adds up. So, these are things that, we feel are very important and really critical to the success of our investments.
100%. And so if the mission of the tour is to get a signed application, which it is, that's the mission. So you want to bring an interested resident that potentially could be a good fit for the community. The mission is to get a signed application. And what's the best way to do that? It's to build trust. So you want to build a connection right off the bat. And that's one of the things that we train our property managers, leasing agents to be able to build trust, to build rapport. And so this is something in the brokerage business, John, you and I, like we've come from going on competition with like 6 other agents to be able to list a house. And we'd go in, and the difference between the agents that got it and didn't get it were down to inches. Any given Sunday, the movie comes up again. I know we keep referencing that movie with Al Pacino, but it's down to a game of inches. And so trust is one of the biggest, we'll say, goals with a tour. And so you want to build a meaningful connection with them. You want to find out what their main goals are, what their paradise is in regards to what they're looking for. You want to be able to find what is the main problem that they're currently facing, and you want to be able to show empathy as well, that the situation they're going through, that's tough. And to use those empathy words, I totally understand where you're coming from. I appreciate where you're coming from. There's somebody else that had gone through that as well. and this is what they did when they came over. And so if you can build rapport with them during the tour, and this is one of the big goals during the tour, you build trust, and your ability to be able to convert by the time we're done the tour and to be able to ask for that application, to ask for the order, so to speak, it goes up immensely. And I think that skill set with communicating is not prevalent in the industry. And so one last thought on this is, in the brokerage business, we talk a lot about this idea about a selling purpose. And the selling purpose when you're selling houses is to help people get the good feelings they want about what they're buying and selling, and about themselves. About themselves. And so the same is true for any resident that's looking for a new apartment, is to help people get the good feelings they want about what they're going to be leasing, because it's going to be their home, and about themselves. And so if we just keep that top of mind during the tour, it makes our ability to be able to convert that to an application so much greater. That conversion rate is much more likely to be converted at a higher rate when you can take that step as an initial goal.
That's right. And I think for us, what that looks like is that first moment when that potential resident walks in, we don't just, start walking the property. We don't take them straight to the model unit. We invite them in. We actually do a few small things that make a big difference, but we have a whiteboard that's located right at the front of, the front door of every one of our leasing centers. And we actually write down their name, like, "Welcome home, Susan." We know they're coming. They booked an appointment. So just put that up there. That's an immediate, like, "Oh, wow," little wow moment. Small thing, but, makes a good impression. We teach our leasing managers to actually stand up and greet them at the door. Don't sit in your office and make them come to you. And then, invite them to sit down. And really what we're talking about, and you succinctly said it perfectly, really, but it's that idea that it's about them, not the property initially, right? We want to get to know who they are, what they're going through, what those pain points are, what their challenges are, what their hopes and dreams are for this next living accommodation. And we build rapport. The best way to build rapport, Mark, is asking a lot of great questions, right? Saying their name, just getting to know them. I always remember from How to Win Friends and Influence People, that idea that, you could literally talk for 5 minutes, the other person talks for an hour, and they're going to walk away going, "What a great conversation." Because you asked so many questions. You just gave them that opportunity to talk, right?
That book is gold, man. It's so good.
I mean, it's almost 100 years old, and it's probably more relevant today. I think with everything happening with social media, people are sort of reverting back to, I think, a lot of bad habits when it comes to building relationships. So that authentic approach really makes a big difference. And then what's happening is the property manager is gathering all this intel. So later on, when they're on the tour, they can call back to, so we shift gears in a sense to the property way into the process. So when we're in the model unit, you're saying, "Hey, I remember you mentioning X. Can you see how this unit will help you with that? Or you mentioned this. Can you see how we can help there?" But it's all about them. And it's really throughout the process, but specifically on the front end, it's just getting to know them, listening. And I think that in and of itself sets the stage. And then we go beyond that, right? That Brandon said I mentioned, we have some soft, quiet music in the background. We have a refrigerator fully stocked. We actually call them the love fridge because, man, this thing is like a 7-Eleven, right? I mean, it's got, soda waters, sodas, bottled water, sparkling water, snacks. We think about the whole thing, right? So if somebody comes in with a couple of, 3 and 4-year-olds running around, here's some goldfish or here's some gummies, right? And it kind of lets the parents focus on, viewing the unit and the property. So that's how we set the stage before we even start talking about the property. It's all about them, making sure they're comfortable, they're refreshed, and they're heard. Those are really the 3 key items.
100%. And one last thing with that first impression, what's so important is a couple things is, John, you had mentioned it, that standing up and not just sitting in your chair and like, "Hey, come on in." It's standing up and showing honor. That's one of the things. Joanna's parents are Polish, and one of the things that Joanna really harped into me when I first was introduced into the family is like, when they walk in the room, like when they walk in the house, you get up no matter what and you go see them. And we drilled that into our boys as well. And it's a respect thing. And so getting up and actually walking over and giving a firm handshake, John, not one of those wimpy little handshakes that, by the way, my approach to when a handshake is not like a solid handshake.
Yeah.
What I found for me that works well is I say, can we do that again?
Yeah.
And I'll go in and do it again because nobody likes one of those kind of half handshakes where,
Yeah.
somebody grabs like half their hand and it just doesn't feel good. So like a good handshake
Yeah.
with a smile, that's another big one. That's a principle from How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then the other one is using their name. So
Yeah.
you had mentioned it, writing their name on the whiteboard. People love their name. I mean, it's the most valuable word in the entire English language to that
Yeah.
person, their name.
That's
And
right.
so,
The sweetest sound in the world is the sound of one's own name, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And so using their name when you're speaking with them, and you're welcoming them is boom. You got 7 seconds to make a good first impression. Like they've actually nailed that down. Like that's proven. They have 7 seconds to be able to build, we'll say, a good first impression where they say, you know what, this is a place that I could see living. And so this is why, backtracking a little bit, that when we take a building over, that first impression in regards to the exterior landscaping, that sign, when they drive up to the property, it needs to be a wow when they walk in, and then they see the property manager, the leasing manager that are friendly. They stand up, they use their name, they're welcoming. Like within the first 7 seconds, your ability to convert that goes up dramatically compared to the competition, which John, you and I, we've walked the competition and they're not doing this stuff, not even close.
That's right. I mean, 100%. It's to me almost a situation where they just sort of have this mentality where if they like it, they'll fill out an application.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the general impression.
And we were getting that pushback, right? At the beginning, It's like, oh no, this is different than selling homes. No, you don't need to do it. This is different. But they're selecting their home that they're going to live in. They may not be buying it, but I mean that could be a home that they're in for 5, maybe even longer, 5 years or more. Yeah, some people it's a transitional. It's going to be 1 year, but everybody wants to be emotionally grabbed to where they're going to be living, especially if they're going to invite friends over. They want to make sure that they're wowed when they move, when they're making their decision, and in return, when they bring their friends, they're not going to be embarrassed.
That's right. Yeah, it's to me, it's like kind of like the Maya Angelou. She had this quote: "It's not what you say, it's how you make people feel that they really remember." And that's what we're thinking about, right? And even if you said to me, Mark, that hey, we've done this for 5 years, we've measured the results, it only resulted in a 5% improvement, we would still 100% do it because a lot of established businesses, by the way, would kill for 5% more growth, right? And it's just that idea. It's it's hard to measure these things, but we know it's working because all of our buildings are at almost. Now, let me back up a little bit. We don't want full occupancy, to be very clear. 95, 96 is really the target. That tells us that we're maximizing the rent that we're asking and finding the right balance. A property that's 100% occupied may not be charging enough, in other words. But when I say, the proof is in the pudding because all of our buildings are 94, 96% occupied at all times. And it's just because we're doing these things. So I have no doubt it's a big contributor.
Well, and John, not only that, we're overshooting our projected rents, which to me is like, okay, we're pushing rents as well. And the only way you can really do that to its full potential is by over-delivering on value and over-delivering on customer service. I mean, look at the Ritz.
Yeah.
Look what they're charging for staying, a night in their hotel. But they're creating an experience. And so because we're creating an experience for residents, it allows us to be able to charge more. And so the rent's getting above our projected rents. I mean, it's just, you had mentioned proof is in the pudding there.
Yeah, that's it. No, that's right. So we're still in the leasing center at this moment, right? We've got some intel from the potential resident. We know what they're going through. We know what they're looking for. So before we take that next step and tour the actual model unit, we actually pause and just review really quickly our mission and our values. We want people to know what's important to us and the standards we hold ourselves accountable to. So our mission at Faris Residence is to go full out for our residents and to provide the best living experience in the world. Our values at Faris Residence are actually the same as our values at Faris Capital Partners. So a genuine love of people, make wise choices, first-class service, operational excellence, and speed of execution. So we want them to see that. Now, when I say see it, we talk about it, but we also have posters on the wall. So it's actually just a pause moment. Hey, real quick before we go to the model, I want you to see this. This is how we hold ourselves accountable. And then we discuss our 3 guarantees, which is something that we've created that is pretty unique to us. In fact, I don't know of any other operator that's offering these guarantees. But the happy living guarantee, we want the resident to know that at the end of the day, it's a big decision we're asking them to make. And so if for some reason within 30 days of moving in, they're unhappy and they just, for whatever reason, maybe the commute's a little longer than they realized or whatever the circumstances are, just come talk to us and we'll release you of the lease. It's really a benefit to us as well, because if a resident's unhappy, it's better to let them find a better accommodation than to have somebody unhappy for a whole year, right? And so it's a value to the resident, it's a value back to the business. The in your corner guarantee is a big one because right now, in the current state of the world we're in, there's just a lot of uncertainty, and we saw it with the pandemic. Things coming out of the blue that nobody could predict. And so with that, we want to make sure that our residents, if they have some sort of major life disruption that was not their fault, that they could not have predicted. So maybe their company's going through a major downsizing or their job was relocated to another city. Just show us the documentation and we'll let you out of the lease. It applies to other circumstances, maybe a health issue in the family. So we have a few different ways we look at it, but just document it, show it to us. And if it makes sense, we'll release you of the lease. And then the third one that's actually probably the most important in a sense to our residents is our prompt service guarantee, which means all maintenance items will be addressed within 24 hours unless a part's ordered. Internally, we say 24 hours, but what we're really striving for is same day. So if a leaky faucet or a clogged toilet comes in at noon, we're going to get that done before 6 p.m. that day. But it's just a mechanism to force ourselves to perform and to make sure those maintenance items are handled. Because if you actually look at resident surveys, one of the number one complaints residents have and why they leave an apartment building is because of poor service when it comes to maintenance requests. And how we back that up is if we don't perform, we give you a $50 Visa gift card. So it really forces us to ensure that the important things are handled and our residents feel that they're not going to be handcuffed to us if something, major comes up in their life, right? Goes back to on our side, how we kind of think about it's the right thing to do because we care about people, that genuine love of people. But the business side of it is that if somebody can't pay their rent, they're just going to not pay their rent or they're going to skip out in the middle of the night. So better to just work through it with them and come up with a graceful exit so we can bring in a resident and have as minimal downtime as possible. Somebody sitting in a unit not paying rent, we're losing income and we're not able to rebook that apartment with a new paying resident, right? So it's just really, there's a lot of business decision making behind this. It's not all about just loving on people. It's still about the bottom line at the end of the day.
It's a strategic differentiator in
That's
business. Right. There's many, many books. And, for us on the real estate brokerage side, we actually offer a guarantee that you can cancel your listing or buyer agreement with us at any time at no cost to the client. And so it's the same thing. And so that's been actually a huge relief. What's interesting is that a guarantee needs to be able to hurt a little bit if you don't follow through. So the guarantee is powerful because with our leasing agents, when they don't deliver, or say our maintenance tech doesn't go out right away and they don't deliver and we need to give a concession, that's a canary for us that, whoa, what's going on? And so you're going to pay for it one way or another. You're going to pay for it if you give bad service. That example I've shared in a previous podcast, I was getting my haircut and the barber was like, I'm moving out of my place. I had this maintenance, the toilet's been running for months and finally I got my brother in to fix it and I'm pissed off and I'm moving out. This guy was like doing extremely well. He's opening up his own barber shop and he's moving out. And that was a great story of a maintenance issue it was easy fix, easy. It was a leaking toilet. And he just got so pissed off about it. And so people moving out and being upset and giving negative Google reviews is this downward cycle versus, hey, you know what? If we don't deliver, if we don't do it within X, then Y will happen. And so it's got to hurt a little bit. And if it hurts a little bit, that's good. The fear will it'll force you to do the work. And then the canary is if you don't do the work and we'll say you got to pony up and make a payment or a gift card, whatever the business is offering. In this case here, it allows us to be able to look at it, which is a blessing for us to say, hey, what about our system or what about the people that are working in the position? What's going on? Do you understand the process? Do you understand how it's done? Have we explained it to you? what's going on? Is there something going on at home? Do we have we'll say a manpower issue? Was there weather? Like, help us understand, and allows us to have the conversation to fix it, to be able to maintain the standards in the community, to be able to be like, wow, this is a community that stands out. And the cool thing about this guarantee as well is it gives people something to talk about. And so the residents are like, oh my goodness, that's great. And what it does is it helps us increase the ability to be able to sign an application, sign a lease, because nobody else is offering this. And it takes pressure off them, because residents are fearful of they're not fearful of signing anything. That's the big thing that I've realized. It's not about signing something. It's the fear of making a mistake.
Yeah.
And if you can take that off the table, that, hey, listen, if something comes up, you can cancel the lease. If you get a job, offer somewhere else, or you lose your job, like, you can cancel the lease. Or I know you had mentioned that was your problem in your previous apartment, that, maintenance issues were not getting fixed. We understand that. And this guarantee will actually ensure that doesn't happen here. Is that something that is valuable to you? Yes. You take that off the table so that them signing, it removes the risk. And if you can do that, your ability to convert it goes up, and your ability to be able to deliver a wow experience goes up immensely as well.
Yeah. And these are also posters on the wall. So this thing is very visible, right? The mission, the values, these guarantees. But, another benefit of this model, Mark, and all those things we just touched on, the guarantees, the mission, our approach, is actually a good filter for the staff, right? Because in other words, when we're talking to a potential staff member and we're saying, here's how we do things, here's how we operate, these are our expectations, these are our mission, these are our guarantees, we've run a few people off, right? Because I'm just not used to that, or that's not really the way. It's something you see a lot in sales, and I know you felt it at Faris team, and we certainly felt it at Mark Spain Real Estate. But, a lot of salespeople, I would say, especially those with maybe that more natural sales ability, that gift of gab, whatever you want to call it, they think they've got it all figured out, and they resist scripts. They resist this kind of approach, right? Because they're like, it's got to be organic and authentic. And what we tell people is, look, like, you got to be real, but you still got to follow the process, right? And so, it just goes back to systems, in my mind, are always, if you have a problem in your business, you're either missing a person or you're missing a system. And let's just put it that way. So, yeah, it's a good filter, once again, to ensure we have the right staff on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And if somebody's been in the business for a long time and this is a new concept, a lot of times it's hard for them.
That's right.
And so if they're not on board, this is just how we do it here.
Yeah.
And so they walk out, John, and we actually have a map with the numbers all the way along. And so the next step is actually walking out around to the amenities area, and we actually point out to all the amenities. And then from there, we're walking actually over to the model suite. So I'm gonna use Largo, or Tampa property, 104 units, for example, where we actually bring them into the model suite. And so that model suite is fully staged as well. And then we have a fridge in there as well, with a little wow fridge. So, the kids get really excited on that.
That's right. We want to highlight the amenities, because at the end of the day, having that pool, that gym, those are value adds that a lot of residents are looking for today. We are very thoughtful when we take over an asset. In that first 28 days, we do a full transformation. But, our Largo property, going back to that, they had recently put in some new pool furniture, but there's just ugly umbrella colors. It just didn't have that wow. And so we kept some of it, but we brought in some new couches and, moved the grills to a whole new section of the property. And so created like some hangout areas, gave it really a resort-like feel. Our gym, we doubled in size, actually probably close to tripled in size. So we want to highlight those things, but it's just another opportunity as you're walking to build rapport and to ask, what's happening? What are they resonating with? Some people, maybe they'll never go to the pool. You're still going to show it, but you learn that information. Okay, so what really is important here? So that sales process, that discovery process, I should say, is still happening along the way. But we also want to highlight some things that maybe people aren't really thinking about, but are important. So, for example, one thing we've observed when we're touring deals, and it's wintertime, right? Deals are selling in the wintertime. So we've been on properties at 5:30 and you're like, man, these breezeways are dark. It's just not a great feeling, right? Because it's just some old light, fixture that was put in 15 years ago with a weak light bulb. So we always put in very new, modern, beautiful lighting, but that it's bright. So it provides an element of safety. So when somebody comes home at the end of a hard day's work, if it's dark out, they're not walking into like a dreary kind of like dark breezeway. We make sure to all the fire extinguisher boxes. It's funny, those things sit out there for 25 years and the fire extinguisher still works, but the thing's rusty and just ugly looking. So we replace all that. So all those things, and we're just talking about it from a safety perspective. We have to be a little careful around liability and things like that. So we can't say, oh, it's a crime thing. It's just more, we just want to make sure you feel comfortable. And when you're coming home at the end of a hard day's work, it's just, it's just a great experience.
Well, you imagine if you're moving into a community and there's 100 other residents there, safety is a big thing. I mean, especially if you're, say, a single mom. And, you're going to be, walking out in the evening. What about your kids? Like, you want to know this stuff. So we're talking to, especially at the beginning when we find out what's important to them, we want to be able to speak more into that. But yeah, enhanced lighting, this is something that we'll point out. So when they're actually walking through that it's, oh, you guys are thinking about that. Whereas they're not even talking about this at the other, in general, from our experience. I'm sure maybe some are, but safety is a big thing for a lot of people. We'll talk about the background checks that we do on all residents and employees and vendors. And then we talk about our zero tolerance for harassment. We talk about resident first, the communication that we have as well. And so if something is really important, we want to make sure to speak into it. But in general, there's set things that are, we'll say 90% of the things that are important to residents, we want to proactively speak into, because sometimes we'll ask something and then they just won't actually say, oh, this is important for me. But by actually speaking into all kind of the main checkpoints, we make sure to hit, we'll say, the buttons that maybe were not brought up at the beginning, or maybe they forgot to bring that up. And that helps us seal the deal as well in getting them to an application.
That's right. So we've walked through the amenities. We've talked through just all those things we've done for, resident comfort and safety. And now we've arrived at the model unit. So our model unit in Largo is actually a unit. So it's a 1-bedroom unit. We have it permanently staged. We had a designer come through, select all the colors, all the way down to placemats and place settings and, hand towels in the bathroom, shower curtains. So, it looks like somebody could effectively move in that afternoon. I mean, that's how, we stage our units. It's not just a little thing here or there. It's a fully staged unit. And so the first step as they walk through is to circle, you mentioned it, but we have a wow fridge in the model unit as well. So, does anybody need a refreshment, right? And just, let the resident walk through. What I found, at least, especially for the first minute or two, it's just best to just not talk, let them kind of absorb and walk through. And then as they start to show, and a lot of times they'll start to like light up. They see the kitchen, they see the bathroom, they see the washer and dryer we put in. And so we train our property managers to look for those signals and then reaffirm. It says, oh, I see that you really like this kitchen here. Do you think this would be great for your family? I know you mentioned your last kitchen was sort of a galley style kitchen. You have a lot of room here. Or do you like, we remove this wall to open it up to give you that open floor plan concept? How do you like that? Right. And so it's not only that, it's looking at every little thing, the flooring, just calling out all the things that we've added into that unit to make it an exceptional living arrangement for that resident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right on. So yeah, we're bringing them through the gym. We're bringing them through the mail center, the dog park. As we're bringing them back around to it, then we want to actually bring them back into the office. And from there, that's where we're actually going over the pricing conversation. And so we'll actually get into a summary of the pricing. We'll go over the floor plans at that point. And at that point, we really go over what is important to them. And then we're really sizing up to be able to get that signed application, because that is a mission. And that's one of the things that I've seen with salespeople, John, that they just don't ask for the order. And so at that point, that's the mission, to bring them back, sit down, and then we're going to be going over the next step. And the first step there is going over the pricing.
That's right. So it's the pricing. We kind of do a quick summary of everything they've seen.
Yeah.
We call it value stacking, right? So it's this idea that you're getting this. So valet trash, you're getting pest control. All this is included in the rent. So they can see that that one price that they're going to pay is inclusive of all of these amenities and features. Mark, one thing we observed pretty early on too, touring rent comps, because at Mark Spain Real Estate and at Faris team, right? Like we were big on leaving behind some collateral, right? So whether that's a presentation booklet, the competitive market analysis, just having a leave behind, something for them to either, in this context, they're going to potentially take it to where they're currently living. But a lot of the units we walked, a lot of the buildings we walked had nothing, and if they did, it was printed out that morning on some cheap printer paper and they would handwrite things in. So we actually have a nice branded folder. And so when we're going through the pricing, we have the pricing document. We circle the unit that they're favoring and they're liking. We write in the pricing. We insert that in. But we have glossy, printouts, right? So it just feels a little more substantial, like we're, just a little bit of extra attention, a little bit of extra effort. But we also go through the area and we look for all the shopping, the proximity to schools. So in other words, all the area amenities, and we highlight that, our Largo deal, you're about 15, 20 minutes to the Tampa airport, 10, 15 minutes to St. Pete. You've got the Rays, you've got the Bucks, all the sports teams. So we, have a sheet just on the entertainment, the proximity to beaches that just make it easy for them to make a decision is the bottom line, right? When they're back in that office, it's a sit down, it's a conversation. And what we're doing is we're going and we're looking at our notes, the leasing manager's reviewing and saying, okay, these are the 4 things that were important. So now I'm going to go back and say, hey, you had mentioned this. Can you see how we can, and then go through that list. Mm-hmm. And then you said it, man, most salespeople don't ask for the sale. So we ask for that signed application. One reality that you have to understand in this business is not every signed application will result in an approved lease, mm-hmm. right? Maybe there's credit issues or maybe there's something on their criminal record, and we weigh and consider all those things. So, we have to sign a lot of applications to make sure we hit our goal. Our approval ratio is pretty high, but we're not hitting 100 or batting 1,000 here. Sometimes we're rejecting people, right? For one of those aforementioned reasons. So it's super critical. We maximize the amount of applications so we can maximize our occupancy.
Yeah, right on. So our tours, it's a discovery process. And so it's not just like a straight up pitch. It's a process of bringing people through, but it's a process as well of being able to help them imagine living in the community that we have, and to be able to help them come across the bridge to say, hey, listen, is this the right fit for you? And then it's a mutual decision at the end once they fill the application. But the goal is to build comfort. The goal is for them to be able to see this community as their home. And by curating the experience, we build an emotional connection by solving the problems that they brought into us by going over a set number of questions. And so these important questions become very, very important at the beginning, because we use those all through the process to be able to overcome and be able to present solutions to the problems that they've had. And then the next step, the last step of actually asking for the application to be signed is really, it's simple. It's like, okay, the movie is coming to an end. This is the next logical step. And, them walking out the door without a signed application is like stopping when there's like five minutes left in the movie. Yeah. That would just be cruel, John, to not ask for the order at that point, right?
That's right. Show me the end of the story. Yeah, no doubt. And, I'll just put one little fine point, but, you need to also be thinking about, the demographic you serve. So going back to our Largo property, there's a large amount of Spanish speaking folks there. Many of them speak English, but we made sure we had a fluent Spanish speaker on staff just to better help, because, often people are more comfortable speaking in their native tongue, even if they're fluent in English. And so, in Florida, Spanish is a reality. So, you have to go that deep in your thinking. It's not just about the right person. It's also meeting the right, the demographic for that particular area. Right.
Yeah. Well said, John. So that's our process from start to finish. This is our mindset, and this is our philosophy and our overall thesis, that if we do this really well, it is a huge competitive advantage. And one thing that we've realized is that this is not normal. It's not normal to be able to be treating residents pretty much like owners. And when you treat them that way, when you treat them really well, it comes back to you tenfold over. And it just makes the property management so much easier. Like when you don't have people that are pissed off and kicking in doors and all the rest of it, they want to do a good job for you when you go the extra mile for them. And so it's actually made it a lot easier for us to be able to manage these properties, and it's built an overall much more enjoyable community for residents. So it's a win-win-win. So if you are looking for a real estate investment, you love real estate, you're a high net worth investor, and you want to learn more, go to fulloutinvesting.com and you'll get access to our 10-step full out investing process. And you also have a sample deal there as well to find out more what our next potential deal will look like and how they're structured. Thanks for listening, guys. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share with other high net worth investors that you think will benefit from it. Thanks for tuning in to the Multifamily Investor Playbook. We love and believe in you guys. Keep dreaming and investing big.